All right, welcome everybody to this week's episode of Is It Prophecy, broadcasted here on Arut Sheva, IsraelNationalRadio.com. Also simulcast on YouTube as the Messiah Hour. If you go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour with Ari Louis, you'll see all of our current episodes. We have an archive of episodes with Rabbi David Katz, Rabbi Sharga Simmons, founder of Honest Reporting, and Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi. This week it is our proud pleasure to bring on a great guest. This gentleman really is knowledgeable and really an expert, I should say, on all the matters that we've been discussing for the last few months in this program. He's the author of 4 books on the subject regarding Mashiach. You can find that on Amazon.com, also cityofluz.com. Please bring on the show. Warm welcome to Rabbi Bakst of cityofluz.com. Rabbi, how you doing out there?
Hi, Baruch Hashem. Happy to be here with Yari.
All right, now, another interesting thing, you were talking about things we see in the world, and this has been brought to my attention a few times by different people, fans of the show, about the North Pole and South Pole switching. Now, I don't maintain to be a scientist or know these type of things to death. That's not my field, but wanted to know if that is related at all to our discussion in this show and this show's content in general.
Yes, excellent question and observation. There's a phenomenon, a scientific phenomenon that's called the polar shift. And this is not speculation, this is a scientific fact. You can look it up, that the North and South Pole, the magnetic North and South Pole, have, during the history of this planet, reversed themselves numerous times. All the scientists agree are on the verge of a new polar shift. And I just came across an article recently where they now think it's going to be a lot sooner than they even thought. Because it's apparently cyclic, okay, over many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Okay. Of course, it's based upon from a geological, scientific perspective. Okay. If we just use this as a model, that's all we needed for. Okay, that's interesting. Poles can shift. The north is going to become the south will become the north. Okay, using that as a model, here's a very deep way to understand something in a very simple way. Okay, and that is what is Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba? This world and the next world. All Torah is predicated upon dimensionality. And the truth is, we have to understand dimensionality before we even understand God and man and all these other issues, okay? And Olam Haba is the other dimension. Olam Hazeh is this dimension, okay? One way to understand, in a profoundly simple way, but at the same time not losing the simple profundity of this concept, is Mashiach is simply the middle ground between if Olam Hazeh is going to switch positions, as it were, with Olam Haba, okay? Which means everything's going to be turned outside in. And this is also a way to understand. Now remember, this is just to give us a little idea, a little inkling. The truth is, you need hundreds of models to understand what reality is and what's, okay? But the idea of using a polar shift to understand that Olam Hazeh, Olam Haba, these two dimensions are about to invert on each other, okay? Which simply means that all of Olam Hazeh is going to be contained in Olam Haba. Nothing is left behind. Nothing. Not a soul and not a single atom. Everything goes. This is a fact in the inner teachings of the Torah, okay? And so this whole reality, and here's an example of this. Enoch, okay, the verse says that Enoch walked with God and then he wasn't. And sages tell us in numerous places that he was transformed into a higher dimensional consciousness, a higher dimensional reality. And it says that in the process of him transforming, his entire flesh became lapidei esh, tongues of fire. Okay? That's just alluding to the physical transformation of going from our lower dimensionality into higher dimensionality. And to an outside observer, it looks like his whole body is burning up in hundreds and thousands of tons of interdimensional fire. This is not physical fire, but that's just giving us a little insight, a little clue about what is going to occur to this entire reality, including all of us.
Now, I want to talk a bit about the Vilna Gaon because the Kabbalah you teach is, a lot of people don't understand that the Vilna Gaon was, a master Kabbalist, and he was a big fan of Jews coming to Israel. People have this idea that Zionism and religion don't mix, and that Zionism is a secular idea. But I mean, the Vilna Gaon he really championed Jews making Aliyah. He felt that it was part of the process of Mashiach coming. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and I've written about this extensively in my books. The Vilna Gaon and his disciples from the town of Shklov, they began, in truth, the first Zionist movement. And it was called Chazon Zion, Vision of Zion. And this was some 80 years before the term Zionism was even coined in the late 1800s. Okay? This was in the late 1700s. Chazon Zion. And it's because of the Gaon of Vilna that his closest disciples, who are all Talmudic scholars and they were all Kabbalists, they began the first wave of immigration to the land of Israel. It was led by Rabbi Hillel of Shklov, and they're the ones that laid the foundation for the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem. And it was at the instigation and the whole doctrine of the Gaon of Vilna that it was a prerequisite. Jews have to start building up physically the land of Israel, because you have a principle. It's a formula. And it says, nothing radiates from above unless it's aroused from below. All arousal begins from below. It's like a battery. Life is a giant battery. You got to have the negative terminal and the positive terminal. We are the negative terminal. And they specifically came here to initiate, to usher in the messianic process, together with rebuilding the land, reclaiming the land of Israel, okay? Together with the dissemination of the Kabbalah. The Gaon of Vilna says it very clearly. It's well known. He says explicitly that the Mashiach will only come, the Messianic era will only come through the proliferation and the understanding of the true Kabbalah. Okay? And together, he says also, with the reclaiming and the reintegration of certain maps and models from the new sciences. All these facts together, it's a gestalt. It's not one thing or another. It's all of them together coming together. And that then is what he was spearheading with his disciples.
Now, this concept of science, also, I'm very intrigued by that because there's kind of a thought, science is anti-Torah, we should stay away from it. But really, the idea is that science, because you have 1840, you have the Enlightenment era, you have all these technology advancements, and is it that instead of going away from it, we can use it to learn more Torah? We can use the internet to learn more Torah. I mean, the show is being broadcast on the internet, for example. So is that your opinion, or should we stay completely away from any technological advancements?
No, the Gaon of Vilna is very, very clear about it, that the sciences, and once again, I'm emphasizing the new sciences, okay? It's based upon a prophecy in the Zohar that I mentioned, essentially from the year 1840 on, which was the Industrial Revolution, which laid the foundations for the totally unexpected, unimaginable advances in scientific thought and technology. We're not talking here just about using the internet for the dissemination of Torah. We're talking here more about using the model of the internet, which puts in everyone's hand, even someone that's non-technical and non-scientific, oh, the internet, isn't that like a giant global brain? Well, hello. That is the beginning to understand what the Messianic age is about. You see? So it's more about the maps and the models that are supplied by the new sciences and some of the astounding advances in technology. Moreover, and this is something that is almost virtually unknown, unfortunately, and that is that the 7 sciences are not something external to the Torah, any more than the corona of the sun is external to the sun. When you look at the sun, you see the rays of the sun on the outside. Well, there's more energy going on in the center, the core, the nucleus of that sun than there is on the surface. That energy is so great, though, it manifests as what's called the corona, a crown around the sun. You cannot see it with the naked eye. Okay, under certain conditions, you can't see it. There's many photographs of it. Okay, that corona would correspond to, if the sun is the Torah, then the corona, the crown, that's like an aura around the ball of the sun, that is the 7 sciences. That is their true relationship to the Torah. Not only are they not external, they are intrinsic. And until we take back the 7 wisdoms, and once again, the 7 wisdoms is just a general category. There's always, in each generation, it changes. It's not anything about specific 7. It's the 7, what that represents. And 7 is simply when you take light, white light, and you split it through a prism, what do you get? You get a spectrum of 7 hues. Okay? When you take Adam, when you take the Jewish nation, which is the white light, and you put it through the prism of God consciousness, you know what you see? You see the 7 wisdoms. You see also, because each 7 is composed of 10 hues within itself. That's how you go from the 1 to the 7 to the 70. If you put the nation, if you could put the nation of Israel, the soul, and shine it through a spectrum, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see the entirety of the 70 nations of the world. They are part of us. It's the part of Adam that fell out. And and our job is not to separate ourselves from them. Yes, from the klipa, from the bad part, and so forth. But our job is also to bring back in the 70 nations, which is happening now through the prophetic manifestation of the Noahide movement, and also with the whole concept of the Ger coming back now, and that Noahides, righteous Gentiles, are not just, their role with the Jewish nation is not just to be part of the PEP team giving us encouragement and protecting us from the outside. There is an intrinsic role. This is very complicated. Can't go into it now. But what that role is, that's our aura. You got the male and the female aspects of Klal Yisrael. When that male energy and that female energy are in true proper union, their love, that godly love, is so powerful. It radiates out of their love. It surrounds them like a halo. That halo is the essence of the secret of the 7 wisdoms, as well as the 70 nations of the world.
All right, again, we're here on Is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio. Simon Cassidy has the Messiah Hour on YouTube. Again, go to YouTube, type in Messiah Hour. You'll see all great shows we've done so far. Again, my guest for this particular program, Rabbi Bakst. You can check out cityofluz.com. He's written 4 books on the subject we were talking about on this program. Now, Rabbi, I want to talk about, again, this concept of Kabbalah that for some reason it's, in addition to Mashiach, it's not always talked about in mainstream Orthodoxy, but if you look at the Ari Louis, he is of the opinion Kabbalah is in the Talmud and the Midrash. So tell us a bit about what he means by that and why exactly, again, the Kabbalah is somewhat shunned upon. People say that shouldn't really learn it, or you have to be 40 and master everything. That's something that's out there. So if you tell us a bit about the understanding of why people aren't into Kabbalah so much in this generation.
Well, first of all, it has changed radically in the last 40 years. And ironically, as a sidebar here to mention, the Orthodox Torah world began to be more receptive to its own Kabbalah due, ironically, to the Goyim. Because beginning 45 some years ago, the 60s, due to the confluence of Eastern religions, Oriental religions coming into the West, that actually was a stimulation for Jews to look into their own Kabbalah. And that's what then brought many Jews back in the initial waves of the Baal Tshuva movement, beginning in the 60s and 70s. And this was an example of our Kabbalah coming back to us through the backside, through the back door, as it were. And it is much more acceptable today in the world than it was 20, 30 years ago in the Torah community. However, we could answer that there is more learning of it. There are yeshivot dedicated to the learning of the Kabbalah, particularly the Sephardi yeshivot. But in truth, it's still mostly being learned on an academic level, and it has yet to be truly reintegrated fully back into our national and collective consciousness. And part of the reason of that is that it's a language unto itself, and it's a catch-22. You can't understand the whole Kabbalah if you don't understand the language of the Kabbalah, and you can't understand the language of the Kabbalah if you don't know the Kabbalah. You can't understand the first page of the book till you read the whole book. Okay, so it's a difficult situation, and many people, regardless of their intelligence, they can have a very high IQ. They could be a master of the entire Talmud and virtually know every page by heart. They could be a master of all the halacha, and they can be tzaddik. And believe me, they can know a heck of a lot more than I know and be much more righteous than I am. But they will not, unless a person has a propensity for the language of the Kabbalah. Most people, when it's like putting someone up in an airplane, most people don't have a problem, but some people are afraid of heights. It doesn't make them a bad person. It's not their fault. It's just the way it is. Most people, most Torah scholars, because they themselves were not initiated, and it requires initiation. You cannot learn this on your own. It must come from a living tradition. Now that can be nipi svarim, be sofrim. It can be from books and from living teachers. Okay, but until some is initiated in that, and if they didn't learn that from their own Rebbe, who didn't learn it from his Rebbe, then they're caught in a vicious circle, because they can say, well, that sounds very interesting, and so, but you know what? I didn't learn that from my rabbi, and he didn't learn it from his rabbi, so I don't really have, permission to go into those other areas. And the truth is, it's all Chinese to me anyway, because it does look that way on the outside. And that's because we are attempting to use a Goyish cup to understand the Kabbalah of the Yiddish cup. That means that you're using a non-Jewish Gentile way of thinking to superimpose it upon a uniquely innate indigenous mode of Torah thinking. And this type of non-Jewish thinking is, it's Greek thinking. You're thinking like a Greek. This is not that. A is not B and B is not A. And it's all linear, and it's Euclidean, and this is all good and well, it's important, it's all binary system. That's how all computers are functioning, okay? But that is that famous verse, V'yishkon Shem B'ochel Hashem. I'm sorry, V'yishkon Yefet B'ochel Hashem. That Yefet, who's the whole, represents the whole Greek mindset, which is the basis of our science today, Greek science. This is the old sciences. This is not the new sciences. Okay, it's very important to understand the difference. But that way of thinking is what we unfortunately absorbed due to our exile, our millennia of exile in the Western world. We not realizing that we picked up non-Jewish ways of thinking. We lost our true language. The lost language of the Kabbalah is the true language of the Torah, and it works with a mathematical precision that unfortunately very few are familiar with. And it does take many decades to learn it, but the good news is, as I mentioned, any who masters, just gets a familiarity with these fundamental 7 new sciences, you will have power tools in your hands that will enable you, with the proper teacher in Kabbalah, with the proper books and so forth, you will be able to achieve in a few years, which normally would take 20 years, and even then there's no guarantee that Torah scholar, at the end of his 20 years, will have a true tefisa, a true grasp of what the Kabbalah is talking about. And the Gaon of Vilna, once again, was very adamant about the imperative role that the Kabbalah must have. And he points out, he says that most of the basics of Lurianic Kabbalah can be found where? In the last place you think to look? In the Talmud, in the Gemara. Okay? It's little known, once again, but a quarter to a third of the entire Talmud is not halacha. It's called Agadah, or Agadata. In the Agadata, which on the surface looks like all these strange stories, and midrashim, and mythology, and fairy tales, and bizarre statements, okay, that almost looked insulting to the sages, okay, that Agadata in there is encoded all the secrets of the Torah. And there are encoded into the Agadatas, and there's thousands of them. That is the last frontier of Torah exploration. And there are important codes, formulas, direction that's buried, hidden in those statements of the sages that were made in the first, second, third, fourth century, okay, that are crucial to our generation. They planted literal time containers.
All right, that concludes the first part of our episode of Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio. Don't forget to email me at messiahhour@gmail.com and check out this episode on YouTube, Messiah Hour with Ari Louis. Type that in, you're going to see a lot of great episodes. Stay tuned for part 2 with Rabbi Joel Bakst right after this.